Yes, you can walk, run, and dance at your daughter's wedding pain-free. Go to the Joint Relief Institute to get pain relief now. You're not a dancer? You'll dance now. Call 708-888-0000, as in zero pain. Okay, so have you borrowed money for college? You hear us do those commercials. I'm interested in what if you're thinking about borrowing money for college today. Rae Kaplan of Kaplan Law Firm is in our studio. Hi, Rae. Welcome back.
Thank you.
You okay?
I'm okay. I'm still just getting over this cold, but I'm okay.
And I've got a little bit of a sniffle now, too. And I think any of us that have a sniffle or just feel a modicum of indigestion these days, you almost think, oh, crap. Oh, not now, not me, no. And then you almost want to assure people it's not the virus. I've just got a little sniffle right now. I'm fine.
I actually did do that when I was in Starbucks the other day. I was ordering, and halfway through my order, I lost my voice, and everyone looked at me with, big scared eyes. And I said, no, I have no fever. It's just a chest cold, really.
I see a cold sweat. She's got a backache. Run.
I thought they were going to quarantine me.
No kidding. So you're good. Thanks for coming in.
Sure.
You told me a story off the air. Let's tell this first, and then we'll get to the heart of this.
Right.
Somebody came in. They heard about you on our radio station.
Yeah, one of our listeners.
What was their debt?
$300,000 in federal Parent Plus loans, putting 2 kids through school. And when we examined their situation, they were being told all kinds of incorrect information from the servicer, and they were paying about $2,000 a month, and it was really breaking them. They just weren't able to do it anymore, and they came in thinking that there were going to be pretty much no options.
Who has $2,000 a month?
Right.
That's net. In order to get $2,000 to spend, you have to earn $3,000 a month or something like that. So that's $36,000 of the year out the window, just servicing the debt.
That's right. And they were pretty much at the end of their rope and just hoping. They heard us on the air and they thought, all right, well, we might as well just go and see if there's anything that she can do. And it was great. I love these kinds of cases because really what we were able to do is because they were federal Parent Plus loans and the borrower happened to be a full-time teacher in one of our public schools, they were eligible for, instead of a $2,000 payment plan, a $600 monthly payment plan for 120 months. And then the balance is going to be forgiven after 120 months, which is 10 years. So she was going to get over $450,000 in public sector loan forgiveness, and we got her payment down to $600 per month. So basically, she's going to end up paying about $77,000 back on that $200,000 loan or $300,000 loan.
But that does say something about interest payments, doesn't it? So that's a $300,000 loan. And with the forgiveness, she's going to not pay $400,000.
Right.
I mean, and that's the forgiven part. She still will have paid some.
Right. But
it's forgiving $400,000 because of the interest rate on the loan. What was the interest rate on their loan?
So it was 7.2%. But the way it's calculated is it's kind of amortized, and they also factor in 2% wage growth every year. So it's basically within this framework of this income-driven payment plan that the statute or that the law has set up. So, sometimes people are a little bit hesitant to take advantage of this because they almost feel like, oh, geez, is it too good to be true? Am I doing something wrong? But it's the law. It's the law that applies to your federal student loans. And there was a reason that the incentive that Congress had in mind was if you're going to go into public sector, to work in the public sector, we're going to reward you. And the way we're going to reward you is that you have the ability to take out these federal Parent Plus loans, and then you're going to pay something back, but you're going to get forgiveness after 120 payments. And the way it worked out for her was fantastic.
So minimize your payments for 10 years, make all your payments for 10 years.
Right, on time.
And then whatever you're still due is forgiven.
Exactly.
And the payment goes down each month as a result. Instead of $2,000, it's $600.
Right.
If my son or daughter is going to go to school soon, should I borrow the money?
Yes. And so this is the thing that we see all the time is that people don't have a plan. They panic and they're not sure, how they're going to finance their kids having to go to college. And then what happens is your kid goes in, you fill out the FAFSA, your kid goes into the financial aid office. They tell them, well, you're only eligible for $5,000. Our tuition's $30,000. So how are you going to fill that $25,000 per year? And then the parents will go out and take out a private loan, hundreds of thousands of dollars in private loans, and then we're in some trouble because there's not a lot of flexibility with those private loans. So what you can do instead is do not take out private loans for the parents that need to come up with the money that their kids, are not able to get in federal student loans, you can borrow studentaid.gov federal Parent Plus loans, and there's no cap on what you can take out.
Okay, but you just skipped a step. So we have not saved enough money for the kid to go to school. We need some money. Should we borrow it in the student's name? Should the student borrow the money, or should the adults borrow the money?
Both. So the student is going to be eligible. Well, the student first will see what they're eligible for. It depends on what you as the parents make. If you make over $80,000, probably the kid is not going to qualify for that much in terms of as the student loan borrower, as the student borrower, they probably won't qualify for that much. But it doesn't matter, because whatever they don't qualify for, the parents can make up for by getting federal Parent Plus loans.
Okay, but you're not so impressed with that question. I thought that was really critical, to borrow the money, have the kid borrow the money, because they don't have any savings. They don't have any equity, so that their values, they seem so poor that they'll be able to borrow the most at the most favorable rates. That's not true?
No, that's not true. The way it works is that FAFSA, what happens is the kid has to fill out FAFSA with the parents' information in there, the adjusted gross income, and they get all of the family's information in terms of assets and income, and then there's a formula that's applied to determine the estimated rate of contribution, so what they think that the parents are going to contribute to the kid's education, and then on that basis, they determine what the student borrower is eligible for, and it's usually not enough to cover tuition.
So if the student's borrowing money, the parents' resources are sort of factored in.
Yes.
It's almost like the kid had those sorts of resources, because in a way they do.
Right.
Okay.
Unless they're 24 or older.
And then what happens?
So then they're considered an independent.
Now they're on their own.
They're on their own.
Okay,
and so
if they're
then
over the age of 24, then they should apply first.
Right.
They should be the first borrower.
Right.
Not a small detail.
Yeah.
Okay, it's 1042. So now the adults are going to borrow some money. Which adult, from whom? Rae Kaplan from Kaplan Law Firm is in our studio. Her website is financialrelief.com. Her phone number is 312-294-8989.
Right.
If you've got questions or comments we can't address here. Rae, we're talking about how to borrow for college. So you said it's not so critical if the kid fills out the form or the parents do. The parents' resources are reflected on the child's application. So that's not such a critical point. Unless the child's over 24, then they're considered financially emancipated, even if they're not.
Right.
And then they would apply first themselves.
Right.
Now the parents are going to borrow some money on behalf of the kid.
Right.
Does it matter?
So, yes, it does. Whoever, and this is kind of counterintuitive, but I'll explain the reason for it. Whoever between the mom and dad is making less money, the person earning less money should be the Parent Plus loan borrower.
Even though that makes it sound like they have the least ability to repay the loan.
Right. But the reason for that is that the framework within the law says that we can base the payment on the borrower's income, not both people's income. It can be just the borrower's income. So if you have mom making $25,000 a year and dad makes $50,000 a year, mom should be the Parent Plus loan borrower. And it's really more credit-based. It's not income-based. So they're looking at your credit. So if you have something really bad on your credit, then you might not qualify for it. But basically, if you can qualify for a Capital One credit card, then you can qualify for a Parent Plus loan, a federal Parent Plus loan.
Is there a credit score that I should have, 600, 700, that matters?
It's not really a credit score. They're looking for things like if you have defaulted on credit card payments, or if you have a previous Chapter 7 or a Chapter 13 within the past, I think it's 4 years. After that, they're okay to lend you the federal Parent Plus loans.
So the parent with the smallest amount of income borrows the money. From whom?
And that's going to be the Department of Education. So you're going to go to studentaid.gov, and you can call our office, 312-294-8989. We can walk you through it, and we can do a consultation so that we can plan how it's going to look, who should take out the loans, because sometimes it also is reliant upon who's going to have the most income when you retire, because one person might be making more money right now, but when it's time to repay those loans, that person is actually going to have more income than the person who did not borrow. So we have to take that into consideration too.
Sure. So if maybe you're near retirement age,
right,
that's a factor to consider. But we'll back up a step then. So where we said the person with the smallest income should be the person that should borrow it.
Right.
It's really the person with the smallest income when you have to start repaying the loan.
Exactly.
Which might be the reverse of what it is right now.
Exactly.
312-981-7200. Let's see here. Where do we start? Mike, you're on WGN. What can we do for you, Mike? You're on the air.
Hey, good morning or good afternoon. I'm not sure. I'm in Indiana, right by the timeline here. But I had a question regarding the back end. Let's say now comes the 10 years and all the debt has been forgiven. Mm-hmm. And for example purposes, to use round numbers, let's say that's $100,000 worth of debt that was forgiven. How am I going to be taxed somehow on that $100,000 that's been forgiven?
What a great
on
question.
That federal loan?
Because that almost acts like income, doesn't
right.
it?
That's a great question. And if it's public sector loan forgiveness, so like that example I gave where the WGN listener is a public school teacher and we were going to get her qualified for public sector loan forgiveness of $400,000 in debt, she will not be taxed on that as income. They actually just changed the law on that in 2017, where it used to be a taxable event. So they would send it to a 1099 to the IRS, and you would be taxed on that amount forgiven as income. And so that's a big tax hit. Even though it's not happening for 10 years or in the private sector for 20 or 25 years, still it's something you have to consider. So all public sector loan forgiveness is not taxed as income. But if the loans are forgiven and you're retired or you're in the private sector, it is still a taxable event.
It is?
Yes.
If you're in the private sector.
Right.
Well, do you get hit that 1 year? Say you've got $100,000 worth of debt forgiveness. Do you owe $30,000 on what would be $100,000?
Yeah, approximately.
Really?
So, yes. And so we actually had somebody recently where they were going to receive in 25 years over $1 million in loan forgiveness. And what we want to do is we want to avoid that tax hit. So there's a way to do that also where that involves tying in another loan for a reconsolidation to kind of start that clock over again.
Wow.
So there are ways that we can work within the framework of the statute to even avoid that tax hit. But that is something that we take into consideration. But public sector loan forgiveness, no, not a taxable event.
So is that key too then, if you're going to go down this road of borrowing in the right order, borrowing it from the right people, is it critical that I work in the public sector?
It's not critical, but it's something that we go over with our clients to make sure that they understand here's what it's going to look like. Here's going to be if you're going to have a tax hit, and then here's what we can do about it if you are going to have a tax hit.
Thanks for the call, Mike. Good questions. As I think Michelle has one too. Michelle, you're on WGM. What can we do for you, Michelle?
Yes, hi. Thanks. I have a question. So if you have multiple children, not necessarily twins in the same, year starting college, but if you have a junior in college and now you're starting the whole process all over again with your second child or your third child or, on down the line, how do you then apply for a loan? Do the same parents apply for a second loan, or do you just add on to what you have already? Or?
Okay, hold on. Good questions.
Right.
A lot of static there, but let's go.
Right. So, we want to take a look at who the borrower is going to be. So I'm assuming that you're going to be the borrower or whoever, in your household is making the least amount of money, who's a parent guardian. And each year you're going to take out federal Parent Plus loans for each child. And then you're also probably going to want to check that you want in-school deferment. But the answer to your question in short is yes. Every year you apply for those federal Parent Plus loans for whatever it is, whatever the amount is that you need for each child. And then pretty much at the end, when everybody's graduated, we need to take a look at how we're going to structure it so that the payment's as low as possible and you get whatever forgiveness you're eligible for.
But if I have 10 kids, I might have 10 loans working, each of them in my name.
Right.
And okay, there's no limit to the amount of money under those circumstances parents
No
will borrow?
limit.
Yeah.
Nope.
I mean, hey, parents, there ought to be. I mean, don't borrow money that you don't think you...
Right. Don't willy-nilly just...
I don't want to encourage anybody to borrow money that they don't think, even under this kind of a program, they couldn't pay back. John, we've been paying on our daughter's student loan for a master's degree for several years, as her income is not sufficient to pay off her loan. She now has a child and is not employed at all. We would like to not pay, but if her husband's income is considered, we probably will have to. Is that true? What are the options?
Those guys should give us a call because we need to analyze those loans. First of all, see who's the borrower. If it's the daughter's loan and their federal loans, she's eligible for a $0 monthly payment plan that will keep her current and in good standing because she's not working. She's got no income. $0 monthly payment plan is perfectly acceptable under the law. But if they're private loans, then we should take a look at maybe debt settlements.
We keep saying public and private in these conversations. Public is who you want to borrow from first. That is the federal government.
Right. That's federal loans.
But then you also have the best chance. It's also beneficial if then you work in the public sector as opposed to the private sector.
Right.
But if I have one of those federal student loans and I work in the private sector,
still good.
So it's most critical that you at least borrow from the federal government first.
Yes, that is the most critical take-home message. Borrow from the Department of Education, Federal Student Loans, Department of Education. That's the lender, studentaid.gov. And if you want to call us and we can walk you through it, that's fine.
If I work for a school district but not as a teacher, would I qualify for the forgiveness program?
Yes, even if you work for the school district as a receptionist, a janitor, whatever it is, as long as you're full-time, you'll qualify. Full-time? Yes.
Who makes up for the lost money not being repaid?
In most cases that I see, we're talking about a fraction of the people who actually borrow money. Most cases I see people pay back not only what they borrowed, but more than what they borrowed. So the Department of Ed isn't losing money on these loans. They're making money on these loans because the interest starts to accrue right away as soon as you take them out. So the Department of Ed is not losing any money on federal student loans.
Well, if somebody's not paying $100,000 at the end of 10 years, the interest owed, then that's $100,000 somebody's not getting, right?
That's right. They're not getting money that they were owed, but many times they got back what the borrower took out. And some interest.
And some back.
Right.
Not as much.
Not as much.
Francesca, you're on WGN. What was your question?
Excellent. So my husband and I both, we have a 529 plan for two of our kids. Mm-hmm. And so which means if they go to a state school, tuition is covered, regardless of what Illinois state school they go to. Tuition is covered. And our concern is that because we have this now, when we fill out that FAFSA, that is going to affect how much aid we will be able to get for our kids, correct?
Correct. It's going to affect how much the student borrower is going to be eligible for in terms of federal student loans. But it will not affect your ability to take out federal Parent Plus loans if you need to.
Okay, so that was my next question was, I have a part-time job. Let's say I make maybe $10,000 a year. Mm-hmm. With me just being part-time, can I still apply for that federal Parent Plus loan?
Yes.
And that would obviously take care. Obviously, $10,000 is going to be lower than my husband. So then I can have that loan in my name only.
Exactly.
Which would obviously lower my payment. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, what a detail that is so critical.
It's really important because many times we see the opposite happening because it is intuitive where whoever's making the most amount of money figures, all right, I'll be the borrower, but the problem is that the payments then are calculated on that person's income and they pay way
Time's
too much.
up, Francesca. Thank you.
Regardless of what my husband makes, right?
Exactly.
Thank you for the call, Francesca.
Fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Your website is financialrelief.com.
Correct. Financialrelief.com.
Rae Kaplan, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.